what do you think of when I say design mom? You might think of the website, the brand, a persona, even the conference leader. You'll likely know all that just by me saying design mom. But behind all of that is a revolutionary leader for design and parenting and female entrepreneurs. It's Gabrielle Blair. Gabrielle has been on my top 5 list of people I have been wanting to interview from the very beginning of me starting the podcast, and for this important reason. She dreams big and executes small. Gabrielle is not afraid of getting messy, making mistakes, and starting things without really knowing where it's going to take her. But I thought she was especially helpful by teaching us that her understanding that in order to accomplish big dreams, you need to do so with small steps. Today, Gabrielle is going to talk us through a few of the big dreams she has accomplished by taking small and messy steps. They include her Alt Summit, a celebrated conference for women on social media. But Gabrielle shares also about how doing small steps lead to big things within her own family. Our hope here is not that you'll think your dreams only count if you have them on this massive scale like Gabrielle has, although she tells us in the interview that that was actually never really her intent, so that was fun to hear about. But that you'll see and own that getting the dreams you want entails taking one small step at a time. And you can.
I'm Gabrielle Blair. I'm one of the founders of Alt Summit, and I also started Design Mom 13 years ago. That's designmom.com. I'm also a mother of 6, and I live in Oakland, California.
Gabrielle, I discovered you probably near the beginning of your blog when you had this photo shoot in Central Park with all your 6 kids and you were in primary colors and it was just so mesmerizing and inspiring. Followed you all along since then. I finally got to go to Alt this year and it has been a dream of mine for the 10 years you've done it. And it was phenomenal. So I just want to give you a little applause there because you've
Oh, thank
accomplished so
you.
many amazing things. And that's why you're here today, because we're going to be talking about dreams and how to make huge dreams happen and how it's not easy. It's not straightforward, not cut and dry. I'm sure you've had a lot of people see this kind of resume of sorts and just think, wow, it's so easy for her. She just gets these done. And I wish I could be Gabrielle and just get big dreams done really easy. So let's start first by having you share what are some of the big things you would have on your list of, wow, I did that. And then we're going to dive into how it was not so easy and what it actually looks like to make these things happen.
Oh, I love that. I love the topic, love the whole thing. Thank you for having me. Okay, so I feel like I can talk about a few different tracks. I can talk about Alt Summit, and I can talk about this Design Mom, and I can also talk about um, just just making goals for my family and where we live and growing my family and all that kind of thing. So there's kind of 3 different tracks where I feel like I've had some big dreams. And I think I'll start with Alt Summit if that's okay, because I know you just brought it up.
Yes.
Um, so Alt Summit started 10 years ago. I started it with my sister Sarah Urquhart, and the whole thing was to create a place where I could bring together the design bloggers who I read and admired. And remember, back at the time, this is again 10 years ago, this is pre Instagram and pre Pinterest and pre really any of the visual stuff. Twitter barely existed and certainly didn't have visuals yet. And Facebook at the time was really just on a few campuses. So it's a very different world. And blogging was the thing. And I loved reading blogs. And I had read a ton of design blogs. And I had been to a couple of blogging conferences, and um, they didn't they didn't really have tracks for design bloggers. It was like a, kind of a different world. There was a lot of mommy blogging going on. And that was also my world. I was design mom. So I was both design and kind of design bloggers, but also mom and parenting bloggers. And I overlapped both. Anyway, I was on a family trip with my siblings and our spouses. And it just so happens that one of my siblings is Jordan Fernie, who started Oh Happy Day blog and Color Factory. My sister-in-law is Liz Stanley of Say Yes. We're all these design bloggers there. And my family's all into it and very entrepreneurial family. And we're all just kind of talking about new projects or things we'd like to do. And I was saying, what if we did like a design conference, a design bloggers conference, something like that? We wanted to get together all these bloggers that we admired, then we were kind of part of their world. Um, And so everyone liked that idea, but no one really had the energy for it except me and my sister Sarah. Now Sarah wasn't a design blogger at all, but she has always done like a lot of big events, often for politicians. She's worked in political fields, and so I had a lot of experience with event planning. That was a great match. She could do the event planning, and I could do the, this who the speakers should be, and what the content should be, and what the topics should be. And so we paired up, and we put on our first conference, and it was so good. I mean, it was exactly everything I had dreamed of. It was all these amazing people who I respected. Maxwell from Apartment Therapy, and Grace Bonney was there from Design Sponge, and all these just women and men that I really, really respected and had wanted to connect to in person. Uh, and so the conference ended, and I realized, oh, people want us to do it again. Like I didn't really had not thought past conference number one. And in fact was, Design Mom had been around for a few years by then. And so I was really deep into building Design Mom and was going, oh, did I just accidentally start another company? Like not really I had really hadn't thought past that first event because I didn't know if it would be successful. I guess in my head, could have been a big bomb and we just got it done and it was over, and we could forget about it. But it was successful. It was great. People loved it. And the same thing that I was craving, that in real life connection, it turns out hundreds of people were craving, and I'm sure thousands, but the hundreds of people at the at the conference, definitely felt like this was something they wanted and needed. And our feedback was really fantastic. So all of a sudden I found myself growing two businesses, and it wasn't what I expected. Anyway, I had a lot of little projects going, but realized, oh, I'm committed to grow these. Like if I don't post on Design Mom, that only affects me. If I don't work on Alt Summit, that not only affects my sister, who I'm in business with, but all the people that want to come to Alt Summit. So it was definitely this different world, and I had to really think seriously about like, okay, what do I want out of this? What do I want it to be? Um, anyway, so 10 years later, I have been able to refine those goals and dreams and really make them bigger. After a few years, my sister Sarah was ready to retire. Her husband was also retiring from his political career. And so I bought the business from her. And at this point in my life and career, I had been able to do enough introspection that I felt like I really understood what my personal mission was. And it is to amplify women's voices. And I do that on Design Mom, and I do that through Alt Summit, and I do it in other ways as well. But those are the main two ways. So once I really understood that is my purpose, and that is what I'm going to use Alt Summit for, um, I really started dreaming bigger. Like, who are other voices that we want? Who's my number one speaker who I'd want there? Really thinking about that kind of thing. And how can I make this bigger? And how can I grow this? Because we were kind of stuck on how big we could go based on where we were having the conference. But that's where the 2019 event came from. And I believe you said that was your first one.
Yes.
I'm
Uh-huh.
so glad you got to see it. I was super proud of it. Really incredible. It was a huge growth year for us.
Mhm.
So what I had been trying to solve, as I said, my dreams were, how do I be able to accommodate more people, like bring in more people without it feeling like we lost some of the alt magic. And a lot of what the alt magic is it's really inspiring, really beautiful places and spaces, lots of places where you can create your own content if you're a content creator. And also where you really get to connect with the people that you want to connect with. And how do we accomplish that magic while also growing? So, so I got this idea. I had been to South by Southwest a few times. I don't know if you've ever been.
No, I haven't.
It's a massive conference. It goes on for 2 weeks. It's in Austin, Texas in February. And it started as a tiny conference. Well, like 500 people, but now it's got like, I think they said 74,000 attendees. I mean, just massive. And those classes are all over the city. If there's a meeting space, like at a hotel with AV and it's in Austin, there are South by Southwest classes happening there. And I don't think I'm exaggerating much at all when I say that. Like pretty much every meeting space in town gets taken over. And so Alton isn't the exact same model, but I was thinking of that, thinking, well, I could at least learn from how they use spaces. What happened is when I bought the conference with my sister, we moved to Palm Springs, and we moved from a big, huge hotel to a very small hotel, the Samora Hotel, which is If you've ever seen pictures of hotels in Palm Springs, it's the rainbow one. And
Mhm.
as an alt summit attendee, I'm sure you've been there, but it was great. It was so great for us. Our social shares went up by 30%. Attendees were so happy, but we maxed out the space instantly. Like we took over every inch of it. And we sold out tickets in an hour. And we were just on this waiting list that were 3,000 people long. And they were so frustrated at us that they couldn't get tickets.
Yeah.
There was, we were maxed out. There was nowhere else to go.
Mhm.
We were holding keynotes at the pool because there wasn't a big enough space for everybody. We were having lunches out in the parking lot. I mean, like, it was just like we had maxed out every inch. And so we were stuck and we're going, well, what do we do? We know we need this kind of interesting space. We know attendees want that. We know it's important to them. A place, we were thinking of places like the Eighth, and we were thinking of places like the Park or Palm Springs. And so we just felt kind of stuck. Like, okay, do we just become this boutique conference and max out at 700 people, and that's how it's going to be? And then again, I thought about South by Southwest and thought, well, we could copy that model a little bit, but focus on these really cool hotels. So I went to the Riviera. Now, the Riviera is a big hotel with a huge ballroom and the resources of a big hotel, but also very resort, very Palm Springs,
Mm.
beautiful ground, amazing outdoor spaces and pool spaces. And I said, okay, if we center the keynote at the Riviera in the ballroom, if I'm going to bring a big keynote like Joanna Gaines, everyone wants to be there, of course. And we didn't know if it would work, but that was the goal. The goal was, okay, we'll use kind of the best of both worlds. We'll use the big hotel with the ballroom, and we'll use the smaller hotels for additional classes. And that's where everyone can get that gorgeous Palm Springs content that they want. And it worked. We tried it. It
Mhm.
allowed us to basically max out the ballroom at the Riviera, so that's 2,000 people. And we added these other locations in, but fabulous classes going all day long there as well. If you want to learn podcasting or attend a panel,
Mm.
and if you didn't want to get on a shuttle and weren't in the mood to shuffle around, you could certainly stay all day in one location and have tons of content there as well.
Exactly.
Um, so it worked even better than I had hoped or dreamt. And it meant we're scalable, because what it means is all we need to do is add additional hotels. And there's a lot of other amazing hotels in Palm Springs.
So I feel like you're kind of telling me if you want to dream big, you also have to be willing to make mistakes to not just
Absolutely.
go terribly well. Can you give us an example though of when it didn't go so well? And maybe this was near the beginning or the middle or you just recently in terms of
Sure.
alt and
Sure.
how you deal with failure in general. And then I'd love to talk about other things too, like your family. But let's start with that.
Absolutely. So, for sure, you have to be willing to make mistakes. And really, I feel like that translates into you have to be willing to take risks, and they might pay off and they might not.
Yeah.
And ultimately, we have really tried to take risks. Every year, we've tried to take new risks, and some have paid off and some haven't. We have tried. In addition to our core conference every year, we've tried a ton of other formats. So, for example, we've tried online conferences. So, the 2018 year, we did something called All Together, which was like a digital ticket to our main conference, and we filmed all the sessions. We did some summer conferences. We did like 1 day events. Well, it was more like 2 day events, but in New York and San Francisco.
Mhm.
Then we held like full conferences. It was intense. So we've done a lot of different formats, and really ended up losing money on a lot of the different experiments, or at best breaking even, or just making a tiny bit of money, which it's not like making money was ever the number one goal, but you do want to get paid for your work, you do want to be able to pay your employees well, and things like that. And so it's super frustrating to do a big event and feel like, well, we made payroll, but that's about it.
Yeah.
So right now, you've been to the 2008 event, and you have probably seen that there's nothing else on the calendar for Alt Summit until the 2020 event. And that's because we've taken a dozen risks, and really, I don't know if fail is the right word, because the actual event, if you went, was awesome and successful and amazing speakers and all those things, but ultimately not the best business decision. And we have to say goodbye to them. So I don't know how you can do those things without just taking a risk and trying it. And I felt the same way going into this flagship. We had this great thing going at the Saguaro. Again, we would sell out in an hour. The sponsors loved it. Everyone was happy. And I messed with it. I said, well, no, we're going to try something totally different. And it freaked a lot of sponsors out. It freaked a lot of attendees out that had come before. And this was so different. There were definitely people that were not happy about this change.
Hmm.
I, I took this risk. And in this case, it really did pay off. And it was a ton of work, but we all came away from it beaming, really happy and great spirits and feeling like that we had accomplished something beautiful and wonderful and that we were on the right track. So you take those risks and
And not take it personally.
I just have to take it personally. And
Yeah.
even if it was successful, sometimes it doesn't make sense to repeat it. It's like, yeah, that made sense in that context, but maybe it doesn't make, maybe it doesn't make as much sense in the new context.
Almost, it's like you can't take even the success personally, meaning you
right.
can't look through your head in so many ways and just think it's going to automatically do well again, or that you could even
Right.
go from there without, like, you can't take those little things for granted and the big things for granted too. So let's talk about within your own family. So let's say you
Hmm.
have a big dream as a family, and I'm sure you have many examples that you can share
Hmm.
about what this looks like. What is the process that goes behind this? Like, do you break it down step by step? Do you break it into quarters, or do you just have to go for things and start taking those risks, even small?
Oh, that's a great question. And yes, I absolutely have to break things down or I get really overwhelmed. So
Yeah.
I'm going to use an example with my family where we moved to France. We got it in our head that we wanted to move to France. And just for context, I have 6 kids at the time. The youngest is a brand new baby, is about 3 months old. And we get into our head like, we can move to France and find the cure. But like, how do you do that? How do you get permission to live in France? How will we earn money? Do we have to get different jobs? How does that work? We have 6 kids and none of them have a passport. My husband and I had passports, but okay, we've got to figure that out. We've got where are we going to live? Are we going to ship our stuff over there for a year? That doesn't make sense. Like all those things, right? And what, do we pull them out of school? How does that work? Just where will they go to school in France? Do we need an international school? It's
Wow.
thousands of decisions, right?
Mhm.
That you have to make. And it's super overwhelming. So I had to just keep breaking it down. And the very first thing I did was just look up the hours of the place where I was going to take the kids to get their passport photos. Like, not task wasn't even like go get passport photos. The task was look at the hours of the place. Like, like I had to break it down into like that small of a task. I'm running these businesses. I have tiny kids. I have a new baby. Like I have so much going on, and the idea of just even putting down on the list get passport photos was too overwhelming. That was like too many steps in there. And so I had to keep breaking it down. And I literally, broke it down to, okay, well, let's just say it, go to the appointment or make an appointment or, that kind of thing, or decide if the kids need something to wear or whatever. Like, nope, that was too big. I had to keep breaking it down until I didn't feel like an overwhelming step. And then what I found, and everyone has to kind of find their own work style, but if I can break things down into small enough steps, and then I can knock off a few of those steps pretty quickly, like looking up hours only has to take, 60 seconds or something. And I can mark it off my list. If I do that, it gives me momentum. And I'm like, hey, I am accomplishing things. I am marking things off the list. Good job. Of course, my mind doesn't care that it's like dumb things that were easy to do.
It's
It
just,
just,
it's momentum.
it just knows it's momentum. And so it's something that I know about myself, and I've learned over the years that I can trick myself that way. And so if I can, again, break things down into like, I am getting things done, I get things done. And it really was step by step. We just kept breaking it down into small tasks and we got it done. And we moved to France and we loved it. And we ended up saying, a year is enough. Let's extend another 6 months. And then we extended again. We extended again. And we ended up buying a place there and we just loved it. And it really affected our family in a massive, massive way. And for good. And it was worth it doing all those little steps. It was worth it. And just stuff we couldn't have predicted. Our school schedule there was so different than the United States. It was they do 6 weeks on and then a 2 week break, then 6 weeks and a week break. And those 2 week breaks, they were just magical for our family because both my husband and I worked at home
Yeah.
and we could travel and we could drive to all these countries. We'd pile in our van and drive to Switzerland and drive to Belgium and drive to Ireland. You'd drive right onto a ferry and it would take you to Ireland. And then anyway, we drove all over. We drove to Barcelona. We drove all over the place. And who knew what France would turn into? We certainly didn't. But
Mm.
all those little steps were worth it. And even though they were hard and challenging, um, 100% worth it.
You know what is another thought I just had is with all of these big dreams you just described, you still couldn't have predicted where they
No,
were taking you. And so a lot of people get caught up in this how. Even when they're trying to
right.
think about how do I break this down, they're only thinking about the end and how they're going to get there. And what I'm hearing you saying is, taking a little risk, one small step at a time, you can't even begin to imagine where even
Yeah.
that dream is going to take you to the next one.
It's absolutely true. You could certainly, when I was starting Alt Summit, if you told me what it was going to turn into and that it's still growing and all, there's no way I would have understood what that meant or been able to comprehend that or even known I would like that. I might have said, "Oh, well, I don't have time. So no, I can't do that." Like that sounds too hard or too big.
Right.
I just wouldn't have known. And the same thing with France. If someone had told me at the beginning, well, you're actually not going to stay for a year. You're going to stay a lot longer, and you're going to end up having to figure out how to buy property there, and you're going to end up having to, you know, figure out how to buy a car. Do all this kind of red tape stuff. It's going to be complicated, and you have to renew those visas and blah 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 blah. I would have said, well, that just sounds way too hard. Like I can't do it. Well, I didn't know it was coming, but then when it did come, I was in a position that I could do those things, even though I hadn't been able to a year before. Now I was in a place where I could accomplish them. And it's the same with Alt Summit. Now I'm in a place where I have time to work on it and I can do it. And it's
Yeah.
awesome. Yeah.
Well, I know there's going to be some listeners who feel so overwhelmed. Just
Sorry.
so and what I want to break it down for them is by what I learned from you here is that every dream matters. So if they're just even learning how to dream, period, they don't maybe have to think about, planning a conference on
Yeah.
that level or moving
No.
abroad, but a dream matters, period.
Yeah. Whatever it is that gets you excited, that gets you up in the morning, um, that say that's your dream. It can be very small. I mean, I truly did not start Alt Summit with a vision of what it is now in mind. Not even close. I truly did not look past the first event. And I don't even know that I looked past, the first moment of the first event. It was like, I just need to like get it started. You know what I mean? Like, I just couldn't picture it all. And even if I had been able to picture it, I think I would have said no. Like it would have sounded like I have a tiny baby. Or actually, when Alt Summit started, I was pregnant. I would have been like, I'm never gonna have time for that.
Yeah.
So it's totally fine if your dream is small. If it's a modest dream, totally fine. And none of that matters. And it doesn't mean that it can't change or morph or grow. And not every dream has to be huge. Like
Hmm.
not even close. I mean, I can tell you right now that if I'm still running Alt Summit and Alt Summit has grown as big as South by Southwest, that sounds horrible to me. I do not want to run conference 1,000 people. That sounds like, oh my gosh, I hope I'm not involved. Maybe it will, maybe that, who knows how I'll feel if it actually got there. You know what I mean? Um, and maybe my dream is really like, no, 2000 is great with me. I am going to sit on this while I am delighted. And that's fine. That's great. I don't have to say I want a 74,000 person conference.
Exactly. Well, one of the things I wrote down when you were talking is, and this might sound really harsh, but just sit with me for a second. How do you live this one?
Oh,
Not from a place of like, why do you do this to yourself? But why is it all worth it? Because I can hear in your voice, I can see in what you share with us just how valuable these experiences have been. All the good and all the hard along with it have all been worthwhile. So
Right.
why? Why is it worth the hard?
Oh, that's a great question. I also want to go the hard changes. So, like my youngest is now 9 years old.
Mhm.
It's a completely different life than when you have a lot of little kids. So things that were hard then and compared to things that were hard now it can't compare. It's a totally different hard. So while my life might sound hard, um, or I want to say challenging, um, it's the challenges change and the things that feel overwhelming or, again, would have felt overwhelming to me 10 years ago don't feel overwhelming to me now because my kids are a different age, so there's some of that happening.
Mhm.
I would also say I like a challenge, right? I'm going to be someone that's fulfilled by a lot going on. I'm not going to be really satisfied if there's not interesting stuff in my schedule. I'm a really curious person. My brain's always like asking questions. Ooh, what's that? How did they do that? Well, oh, what should I do that? Like stuff like that. And I'm always wanting to learn. And so these kind of things really help me. Some of it is important to me just because it's kind of my core who I am, like say as a parent. So some of this is worth it to me because it's just the core of who I am, and how I want to raise my family and how I want to raise my kids. Some of it's important to me because it allows me to have my own schedule. I knew going in, I wanted to, as I got married, I wanted to have a big family. So did my husband. And I knew that I wanted a flexible schedule so that I could be a parent when I needed to be a parent and work when I needed to work. And so some of this is important to me because it allows me that. And if I've had 9 to 5 jobs, or longer really, I've worked in New York at advertising agencies. I've had desk jobs where I'm there all day long. I know what that means. I know there's some awesome advantages there. For example, health insurance
Yeah.
and a 401k and all sorts of things that I don't get as a self-employed person.
Mhm.
But I can also say that I chose this and I am working hard to make it work because I really do value that flexible schedule and what it allows me to do with my family. So there's a lot of reasons why I do it and why it's worth it to me. At this point, again, it's not about childcare. My kids are older. Some of this stuff is very different now, but I've gotten to know my mission much, much better personally. And I'll repeat it. It's to amplify women's voices. And so that's important to me that I'm working on projects and events and ideas that really allow women to tell their stories and to get attention and to, be brave and bold and confident. And that means a ton to me. And it's a big reason why I would get up and work on something for sure if I had, if I know I'm going to have those opportunities.
Well, I can attest that you have amplified my voice, and I learned so much from you, but most especially just your willingness to try. Not that it all needs to be. I mean, if you were looking at this from a perfectionist point of view, which that's a lot of what my this right? You probably wouldn't have been able to do any of these things. And that is what has inspired me to try, even if it doesn't turn out well. And you know what, Gabrielle, I would actually love to hear, is there a personal dream you're working on right now that you are willing to share with us?
Sure. I've got a couple I can share. One is another semi fail, but I have hopes I can turn it around. We'll see. And that is a podcast. Yeah. So my 12th anniversary of my blog was last July. And I announced to commemorate this 12th anniversary, I'm going to start a podcast. My readers have been asking me, and I thought, oh, that's a great idea. And I bought the equipment and I got trained and I hired some consultants and I spent a bunch of
Wow.
money to make all this happen. And I even recorded some samples and then was like, yeah, I'm too busy with Alzheimer's. And I still, and but I really do have hope of turning that around and turning it into something. I haven't given up on it. And so that's one personal thing.
Oh, I believe in you.
A second one, and I think it would be, I've gone back and forth. I think it would be a parenting podcast with my husband. But
Oh,
anyway,
that would be amazing. Yes.
thank you. And that is definitely something on my mind. The the other personal project is I wrote a Twitter thread last fall. Or I actually wrote it before that, but I published it last fall. And I was, really barely on Twitter up to this point. I had been on Twitter before anything else because it was the first one out there, but my audience doesn't use it a ton. So I had just not really been on it. But anyway, I wrote this thread for Twitter and it went viral, like hugely viral. And in fact, it's been 9 months and it's still going viral, like every thing right around. And anyway, so I have had a couple of publishers reach out about using the thread as a basis for a book. And at first I was resistant because this conversation has been happening, they reached out months ago, really when the thread first went live. And I was very resistant. I've done a book before. They're a huge amount of work.
Yes.
And I mean, I had a successful book. I made the New York Times bestseller list, but
Mhm.
still, I know what it means to do a book. And so I was definitely resistant. And, but then it keeps going viral and I keep getting inquiries about it. And I finally said, I think I'm going to do it. So over the last couple weeks, I've been interviewing book agents, and I didn't use an agent for my first book. I just went directly to the publisher. So this is new for me, but I should be signing with an agent this week. And I'm really excited about that. And then they will be sending out this proposal to publishers. And I already have a couple of publishers that have expressed interest. So that feels really good. And we'll see what happens from there. But that is definitely on my mind, and something that also feels like a big risk because the topic is so different than anything else I've written about.
Mhm. Oh, I can't wait for that. This has been such an honor for me. I'm so grateful that you would spend time with us um and just how much you give. You give so much and you're so fair too. I feel like there's this willingness to learn, which is a big part of what you do. And I just wanted to tell you that. Like what I see in you is not you putting yourself as above people and a guru or anything like that, but as someone who's willing to learn and is willing to share. And you've done that
Oh,
today. So thank you
that means
so
a
much.
10. That really does mean a 10. Thank you. And I absolutely do feel that way. You are my peer. Everyone I'm talking to, I just assume they're my peer or someone that I can learn from. And I hope I always feel that way. So thank you for saying that. That means a lot.
I am so glad you listened to get the hug and kick in the pants you needed to grow. Thank you so much for being here. And remember, life is about progress, not perfection.
The same size as our main conference, or whatever. I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. The main size, sorry, what am I thinking of? Our headline? That's not the word. Shoot.
I'm trying to think
I
of
don't
a
know.
word too, and I'm coming to blink.
Anyway, our key, I don't know why I'm blanking on this, but so we have like our key conference that has happened through the years, either like January, February, March, the first quarter of the year, or flagship. That's the word. Flagship.